getting there is hard because there's an awful lot of feelings you have to go through first before you can get to a place where forgiveness happens. But ultimately we need to get to that place, not for them, not for the monster, but for ourselves. Because you can't function. You can't move forward when you're carrying anger and resentment and frustration and vengeance towards another person. You can't, because that stuff clogs you up. It's like poison in the veins. So you need to get to a place where you can do that, and that is the hardest part. Not for them, but for the person. And ultimately for yourself, because you must remember there's a monster within that we need to forgive. That we have felt guilt about or shame for. Everyone has one. You know what I mean? And we have to find a way to forgive that monster. Now, which comes first? Forgiving what appears to be the outside monster or the inside monster? It may be two sides of the same coin. Because if we can focus on an outer monster, we can say, oh, you know, I'm not like that. I would never do anything like that. Then our inner monster, it's a way of it's a way our inner monster has of protecting itself. Well, look at that guy. Oh, he's terrible. He's terrible. Look what awful things he did. And then you don't have to think about things that you have done in your life that maybe were not so nice. It's interesting how we do that. Ultimately, from a metaphysical or a spiritual point of view, from the point of view of divine mind, everyone is loved, everything is forgiven, because these things, as I talk about, ultimately are illusions. They are not the truth of who and what we are. They are not the truth of who and what these beings who have gone through life as R. Kelly or Michael Jackson. It's not the truth of who they are, and it's not the truth of who we are. But that's hard to get past, because as I say, those illusions are marvelously, intricately created, and they feel real. And the pain and the suffering and the anger and all of it feels real. But I think as most people, or many people who have gone through grief or terrible times can tell you, you reach a moment when it doesn't seem so real anymore once you work through it. There are times when you're going through it that it seems like it's all surreal, that it's not really happening. Because that's that dim sense of awareness that it is an illusion that's being created. And this is not to dismiss it. Not at all. It's very real while you're going through it, but it can also feel very unreal. So will we reach a point when we can recognize this and forgive this monster? Monster within, monster without. I think we can, I think we do, I think we will. But it's important, I think, meditation and focus for us to have. And of course, when we do this, when we do the meditation or we do the mindfulness, we have to let go of all judgment. And that's really hard when it comes to these cases. But to come at it without judgment helps you to get to that place. And that's the healthiest place that you can be. So for those victims, I send energy to them to help them work through what they're going to have to work through, so that they can get to a better place for themselves. All right, enough said on that. My goodness, more than I expected. Let's talk about the AI now, because this is something that we've had a real response to and interest in. There's a couple things going on as far as the predictions for these things are concerned. Now, one of the things that is going to make the development of artificial intelligence not only possible, but develop faster is something known as 5G. What's 5G? 5G is fifth generation. It's the fifth generation of connectedness, if you will. When we began to use cell phones, we started with the first generation, in which not much information could be shared through these through these generational technology innovations. And so as the next generation began to take hold, you had 2G, and 2G allowed for more information to flow through bigger what they call bandwidths. So in mobile phone communication, more information was able to be accessed. You could begin to have longer conversations, and then you could begin to text. So text became a part of it. And then we went to 3G. Now, currently, we are at 4G, which allows people to not only send text, but you can send documents and videos and all kinds of things through your cell phone these days. So the next level is what they call 5G. And while that's not yet in play, the predictions are that by the end of this year, you'll have computers that can run on 5G technology. 5G performance has high data rate, saves energy, reduces costs, you have a higher system capacity, and you can connect a lot of devices to it. And 5G will be that technology that will allow an artificial intelligence computer or hardware software configuration to begin to develop. So you have governments putting a lot of money into being the first to, have 5G technology. So you may have heard on the news that there's a race between China and the United States in developing this technology. It's been compared to the space race of the 1950s, where the Russians and the U.S. were competing to be the first to get into space. Well, there's a similar sort of thing going on with this 5G. And why? Because of what it will allow countries to do, and mainly for militaristic reasons. As far as AI is concerned, it is a very, very powerful tool that a lot of governments are putting a lot of money into. You could compare it to the creation of nuclear weaponry at the end of World War II, where there were many governments trying to develop this technology, from the U.S. to the United Kingdom, Canada. And they all sort of came together to develop this technology. Well, ASI, or Artificial Superintelligence, as it's being called, is another one of those huge events that governments are putting a lot of energy into. Last week we talked a little bit about how AI will develop, and artificial general intelligence, which is the beginning of AI. That's a computer system or robot that can basically learn and evolve, if you will. And we discovered that the AGI is maybe not quite as close as we thought, but some people are saying that by 2020, obviously 2020 is right around the corner, it may be available. Others are saying like 2022. But most seem to believe that at least by 2040, which is a mere 20 years away from now, we will have this artificial general intelligence, and that will be the basis upon which an artificial super intelligence will be able to be created. So, what is an artificial superintelligence? Well, an artificial superintelligence is an intelligence that can not only learn, but can also perform very similarly to a human. So we have leaders in AI research from technical firms, the biggest technical firms, from IBM to Google and Microsoft. That's in the United States, and China is doing the same thing with their companies. And there's a real competition going on. But mostly the push is coming from governments and their militaries. Because if they fall behind, they're terrified of what price their country will have to pay economically and militarily if they do fall behind. Because the first country to really have a workable artificial superintelligence will be so far ahead as far as military actions, that it will be like having a nuclear weapon. So, what happens as the brain in these